Glad everybody to be here. I'm actually in the Netherlands right now. Kit was in town for the Delphi Summit, which was fantastic. It was a great turnout, lots of great people there, a lot of good talks, fantastic, and very enjoyable. And so I decided to stick around here in Europe for a little bit. I'm in the GDK offices here in the Netherlands right now, and going to Paris this Friday, and then Venice after that. Just thought would tour around a little bit. I have my daughter with me, so we're making a good time out of it. Yes, Peppenchurch. I know I said it wrong. South Wales, yes, great to see you from South Wales. Brazil, hello. Cape Town, South Africa. I love seeing people from all over the world joining in. Taipei, oh my goodness. Yeah, so good. Glad to see everybody here. Oh, good day from Australia. I don't know what it is about talking to people from Australia, but you have to try and use an Australian accent. Not that I'm any good at. Uruguay, wow. All right. Well, Utah, hey, we're practically neighbors, Scott. I live in Idaho when I'm not traveling. Brazil, okay. Well, I'm pretty excited about this topic. I have gotten, when I was posting online to get the survey, I got a lot of good feedback from people. Looking forward to it as well. Paul from Australia, Jonathan from Brazil. Oh my goodness. Ukraine, glad you could join us. All right, so essential Delphi add-ons. This so I used to be really, had like a ton of add-ons I used all the time. And then when I started working at Embarcadero, I decided I wanted to kind of roll back the number of add-ons I was using, because I'd so often be sharing my screen and I didn't want to be used to certain add-ons that then I would turn off during presentations and such. And so I just kind of weaned myself off of add-ons altogether, which was kind of painful actually. But so after leaving Embarcadero, I was like, okay, I don't need to be sharing the plain Delphi all the time. And I did a webinar with a bunch of teachers from South Africa. Let's see if there's a way I can do both this. Let's see if this will work. Nope, that's not what I wanted. All right, I'll go back to this one. Oh, I see what I can do. This is a fancier setup, but I get confused easily. Oh, Pers here from Sweden. Holland, yes, we're practically neighbors right now, because Holland is, of course, part of the Netherlands. Yes, I want to do this survey to kind of see, now that I'm not working for Embarcadero, what are people using for add-ins? And also, I did a lot of research on this and discovered new add-ons. And so I thought it'd be cool to kind of talk about some of these different add-ons and why you might use them. And so we're going to look both at like what we learned as far as what are popular ones, but also what are some ones that people are not as aware of that I think are going to be really useful. So I'm going to focus on, I think, some of the big ones that chances are a lot of you might be aware of, but just in case you're not, they're important to be aware of. But then also some other ones that you may not be aware of, but that I'm a big fan of. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah, so be sure you registered there at the link. If you did not register, I can show that QR code. That's where you register to get the replay and the slides. Oh, there was a problem with the replay last time, but I fixed it. When I went to edit it in YouTube, it like only kept the end of it instead of the useful part. And also, if you got way too many emails for this webinar, I apologize. I'm still trying to figure out how to get the email system to work exactly right, so you get a reminder email. So it will get better. I did get response messages from a few people that said that they had trouble with that. So apologies. We'll get better. Oliver from Luxembourg, thanks for joining us. This is, okay, so I moved a couple of these around because, as I said, I am traveling right now, and I realized one of these was going to be in a hotel, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to have good Wi-Fi. So I moved a couple of these around. So these dates are different than the ones on the website, but I'll get the website updated later. So just be aware that these dates should be right now, but subject to change. Life happens. If you do have questions, put them in the question panel, and feel free to shout out your favorite plugins or add-ons, especially if I missed one that needs to be added, or why you think your favorite is the best. Feel free to add those in there, and I'll try and adjust the questions as we go along. So, disclaimer. I work for GDK Software. We're a tech partner with Embarcadero, but this list of add-ons or plugins, whatever you want to call them, is not an endorsement of any of these necessarily, and also any ones that were missed from the list is not meant to disparage them. So it's for entertainment purposes only, although I think it's informational as well. So yeah, if it's not on the list, it was not an attempt to slight them at all. Well, let's get started with the results. So I had 60 add-ons. Some of them, I got a number of write-ins that I went and added to the list as well, which I did mark on the list that they were added late. But ended up with a total of 60 of them across 10 categories, although I did split one of the categories into 2 parts. But this was interesting because I wanted to show this here as far as how many votes were in each section so that you could see which categories were more popular than others. So we see general purpose categories, which of course is going to be the really popular one. It's very popular. I was glad to see a lot of testing and logging and debugging as well. Svander says, tend to avoid plugins due to instability. You know, I've not had that as an issue for a while. The thing I did find annoying is that sometimes there would be a feature I wanted from like C and Wizards and G Experts, and that caused problems trying to have 2 general purpose plugins installed. But yeah, I find plugins very reliable for the most part. Okay, so the people that voted, I just thought I'd be curious to get kind of a general idea about who our voters are. The majority of them, 78%, spend 70% of the time doing software development. So they are focused on software development, which is, I wanted to do this to kind of get a feel for how many people were full-time developers versus maybe people that did other things in addition to development. So majority of the people that responded are full-time developers. I do intend to go back later on and look at this and try and get some other feeling for like what plugins are more popular for people that are full-time developers versus people that develop do other things in addition. But I haven't had a chance to do that level of analysis yet. So if you didn't vote, go ahead and vote now so that we can include that in the follow-up as well. And then percent of the development that they do with Delphi. So 78% use Delphi over 80% of the time. Yeah, so majority of them, again, are focused mostly on Delphi. So I have some comments here about some components. We're going to talk about components later, but right now this is on add-ins, not necessarily components, which is not always a very clear delineation, I think, because some of these are more libraries or components, but I felt like they deserved to be in this one. But yeah, there's so many great components as well. Boyan, hello. Good to see you, Boyan Mithoff. Mithoff Software just joined. He actually, I just saw, has a big new release of, I think, everything, all of his products for Delphi Rad Studio 12. So go check those out if you're, there are a lot of great components, and you have one of your open wires in the list here for business logic. So I also wanted to check and see what people started with Delphi, and I included Turbo Pascal on the list here. Oops, let me hide my video. And then what currently are people using? And again, over half, just barely over half, are on Athens, and then Alexandria is close behind there. So everybody's on current versions, which was interesting. One of the requirements I made was that it had to be for Alexandria or better. And I had a few people write in components or plugins, add-ins that were for previous versions of Delphi that had not been updated for the Alexandria or better. So even though most people were on Alexandria or better, there's still some people wrote in some ones that, as far as I could tell, and I could be wrong, were for older versions of Delphi, which is kind of a bummer. And I did contact a few of the companies, the people behind those add-ins, to see if they were updating or if there was a plan to update it. And the ones that responded, unfortunately, said they weren't going to be updating it. Okay, so here's the results of the survey. As far as what the most popular categories were, we see here, and I showed this earlier, didn't I? Then, so code coverage and profiling category, which we see was actually not, yeah, it's a very small percentage, 5% of people responded in this category, but I think it's a really important one. So I want to start here. Interestingly, I did not, so we see sampling profiler and Pro-Delphi and Smart Bear RQ time are pretty much the big leaders here, although Delphi code coverage has got a good showing as well. The vTune map to PDB with plus map to PDB, actually I wasn't in the list to begin with. And at Delphi Summit, Stefan Glenke was doing a session on that specifically, on how to use it with Delphi. And I was like, oh, well, I wasn't aware of the map to PDB, so I added that to the list, and it still got quite a few votes. So profilers, if you're not familiar with them, they measure the speed of your code at runtime. So they are what you use to make sure, or to discover where the bottlenecks are. Why is your programming getting slow? And the useful thing is you don't want to optimize without profiling first, because you might be optimizing the wrong things, right? You want to discover what parts of your program are users spending the most time waiting for it, right? Which is based on both the user's usage patterns as well as like how often a piece of code is called, right? So you could have a routine that is called once that takes 5 seconds, right? And that might not be worth optimizing if it's only done once per day. But another routine is, for example, every time your screen redraws, this one routine takes an extra half second. Well, that's quite a bit overall of impact on your performance. So that's why you want to have a profiler. There's two types of profiling. There's sampling versus instrumentation. A instrumentation profiler injects some instrumentation in there that makes it so that you get a really clear view of what's happening, of when things are being called. Instrumentation profilers can provide a not more details, but more accurate information, because if the code's being called, then the instrumentation will be called, which will generate the results. A sampling profile, on the other hand, just essentially goes in and grabs a little bit of information and sees where the program's at on a periodic basis. And so what this does is it doesn't require any modification of your program to use it. So that's a good thing that you don't have to worry about so much about whether or not the instrumentation has impacted the performance, for example. But a sampling profiler may miss code that is really quick. Now, since you're using a profiler to find slowdowns, bottlenecks, missing quick code isn't usually a big deal. But it's useful to understand the difference between the two. Some of the ones on the list are sampling, and some of them are instrumentation profilers. The code coverage, which I found most of these tools, a lot of these tools also do code coverage, is usually used with unit testing. And what code coverage does is it gives you a report about what routines and what branches in your code have been tested or exercised. So this could be, is this method ever called, right? Maybe it's never called. Maybe, if it's not called, then maybe you should remove it. Maybe, well, if it's not being called in production, yeah, you don't need it. But if it's not being called in your tests, then you need to add tests to make sure you are testing that one routine. But the other thing it does is it tests paths. So every time you have an if statement, you have a branch in your logic, right? if you only ever test the one branch, you don't know if the other branch is working or not. And so that is what you want to have code coverage for, combined with unit tests, to know if you've tested every branch in your program, which is important if you want to have effective testing coverage. So let's see. These big ones here, sampling profiler is a sampling profiler, Delphi sampling profiler. Then Smart Bear IQ time. Oh, I should look. Because I thought it was a sampling profiler, but someone told me that they thought it was a instrumenting profiler. So I better check and see if it says on the website. Let me share my screen. I think I can share screen here. Nope, that's not what I wanted.
With over 8 million broadcasts and over 600 million viewers engaged monthly, Restream is the #1 tool to increase your live audience.
Okay, so now you should see Smart Bear queue time. So this one works with multiple languages, not just Delphi as well. But I don't see if it says, if it's sampling. I don't see anything about sampling. Okay, yeah, I don't see for sure. Interesting. I will have to look into that some more. Like I said, I thought I knew the answer to that, but then Stefan Glinke, I think it was Stefan, maybe it was somebody else, said something. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't know for sure. So I wanted to double check. So the session at Delphi Summit, Stefan was talking about vTune. Now, one of the things about vTune actually that's interesting is vTune is put out by Intel. And so this link here is for the plugin, Anders plugin that he made that will convert the, yeah, wouldn't it be great if the links were clickable on YouTube? I saw, actually, totally aside, I saw a project, I think it was by Firefox years ago, to do like this rich interactive video format that I thought was really cool, but never really caught on. Anyway, he talked about vTune. vTune's by Intel. The map to PDB, what it does is that when you build your application with Delphi, you want to tell the compiler to create a map file, which outlines where all the code is, or where in the binary, what maps, it maps the binary to the executable, the source code. And then the map to PDB converts that so that you can use it with Intel vTune. Now, one of the things about Intel vTune, and AMD has one as well, is it can show you how sometimes your code, the CPUs, modern CPUs, don't just execute the code you give them. They do pipeline predictions and other things like that. And so vTune can actually let you see how the CPU is interpreting and changing your code essentially to be faster. Now, the problem with predictive, what's it called? Predictive pipelining? I can't remember the term for it. Anyway, I heard it's similar to a train, right? So if you think about a train coming up to a switch in the tracks, and the CPU says, oh, I expect that we're going to take the branch to the right. And so it'll start running down the branch to the right. But then prediction might be made before the whatever else, right? Something that maybe is happening in a thread or something that would then tell it to go the other direction. And when it sees that, then it's like, whoa, and it backs up and has to go down the other branch. And so when predictive pipelining is accurate, guessing correctly, it can really improve the performance of your application. But when it's repeatedly wrong, it can have a negative degradation. So tools like vTune can let you see, get a better idea of what's going on in those scenarios. And so speculative execution. Thank you, Stefan. Yes. I was pretty sure you talked about that too. So yeah, speculative execution is the term for the where it is trying to predict which branch to go down. So vTune is a very, very, very useful tool for understanding that. And then I guess, so vTune is specific to Intel, although I heard Stefan was saying some people can use it on AMD CPUs. AMD has their own version as well. And then Windows, Microsoft has one for Windows, and Apple is Instruments, I think, is the Mac platform one specifically that you can use there for instrumenting on Macs or iOS. And then, oh gosh, what's the one? There's one on Android too. But anyway, for Windows, these are all focused on Windows here, I believe. You get a number of options to choose from. Again, if you want to make sure, if you don't know why your program is slow, you need to profile. And if you're optimizing without profiling it, and I've done this, you're really possibly wasting your time. All right. File management and deployment. So this is kind of a couple of these categories got a little bit kind of stuff glommed together in there. Let's see. Boyan says AQ time only supports up to Delphi 10.3. Oh, okay. I thought their website was updated, but maybe not. So they might be technically disqualified from the list. Yeah, if you've used AQ time and with 11 or newer, let me know in the comments. So Beyond Compare and Project Magician are the top in this category, and they are two of my favorites. So it's good to see that everybody's aware of them. If you're not aware of them, Beyond Compare is a comparison utility for comparing files. And when I discovered this one, oh my goodness, it blew my mind. And the fact that it's written in Delphi and works with Delphi and bundled with Delphi. There's a light version or express version, I think, that included with Delphi is amazing, but the full version is really, really good. And I am really frustrated, actually, that it's so complicated. The GitHub desktop makes it so hard to use external comparison tools because Beyond Compare is just so useful. So Project Magician is one that I love. If you are working on a project with other developers, if you're not the only person on your project, then actually, even in that case, I think honestly, everybody should use Project Magician. I think Project Magician should be built into the IDE. What it does is when you go to check your code into source code, which this wasn't a survey question, but I hope everybody out there is using source control, version control. It is such an important feature to for collaboration with other team members, but also when you are, it gives you the ability to go back to an earlier version, which I wish I put some of my stuff that's not software in version control, because there's been a lot of times I've lost stuff because I've made changes that have been detrimental. It was too far that I couldn't go back to the undo or save. And that's what version control does. It gives you this history of all your changes so you can go back and roll back changes. So Project Magician, though, what it does is whenever you're checking your file into version control, your project file can sometimes be hard to synchronize because it shows you the change, but things move around in there. And so you don't know if you've made a change or not, and you don't want to necessarily check something in that you didn't intend to change. You don't want to check in unintended changes. And so it does a number of things, one of which being normalizing the project file so that everything is lined up and easier to see what changes we're doing. You can also do some things to clean up the project file and stuff like that. But for anything you're putting in source control, which should be everything, Project Magician is a must-have. Rad Installer is an install builder that includes right into the IDE. Autosave. So Delphi, you can set it up in the IDE to automatically save on compilation, but what if you're writing code for a really long time without saving, without compiling? Well, autosave can do a save on a timer. Gridgy Deployman is a tool specifically for Android and iOS, although there's some forks that do support other platforms as well. that make it easier to manage when you have a lot of deployments or resources you're deploying with your application. So the deployment manager that's built into the IDE, this is kind of extends that and makes it easier to work with that for larger deployments. Delphi Docker, I have not used this one, but it's by Hashload. They have a lot of other great stuff out there, the Horse and Boss being a couple of them. And but this is one for making easier work with Docker from Delphi, which Docker is pretty awesome. I did some Docker a while ago before I knew about this, and I haven't worked with Docker recently. So looking forward to trying that again. And then this one is the Apocalypse source connection, is the only one that I've been able to find that is a source control add-in for Delphi that still works with the current versions of Delphi. There's a number of them I saw that were for older versions of Delphi, but haven't updated. But this one will let you work with a number of different version control systems beyond Git and Subversion that are built into Delphi IDE. Okay, so let's talk about business logic add-ins here. Yes, Visual Studio Code has a Docker add-on as well, but yeah, and then that one there is one for Delphi. So these are the business logic add-ons. So Bold's been around for a long time. It was recently open sourced. So I was curious to see how many people were using that today. So it looks like 12% of the respondents are using that. And then we have 34% using OpenWire and 53% using Codelix. OpenWire's by Boyan Mitov. You can find that there at mitov.com. Then OpenWire is up in GitHub. There it is there. I'm sorry, not OpenWire. Bold for Delphi is available on GitHub. And then Codelix is the one by GDK Software that was recently made available free. So let me go out, since a lot of people aren't familiar with these, I thought it would be useful to go out and take a look at them. And while they're all in the same category, I don't know that they're necessary. They're each very different in what they do. So you probably could have a project where you're using all of them together. Yes, so Apocalypse is only Rad Studio 11, but that was the cutoff. As I said, they had to at least support 11 or better. And I think it might have been the only one in the list that wasn't for 12. So let me go to I don't see my screen share option. Nope. No, where did it go? I was just there. Oh, there it is. Man, I'm blind. Sorry. Okay. So this is Codelix. So Codelix is a low-code business logic tool, and so the idea is that you draw out your flows, your business logic visually. And so what this does is it gives a way that makes it easier to, for example, bring in non-developers to work on the project, right? So they can design business logic here. It also makes it easy to view the flow of the program execution in a visual way as well. So that's here. And then we have Mitov, OpenWire. So OpenWire, and I know Boyan's online, so you can correct me if I'm wrong here. But the main thing, what it does is, with all of the components that you get from Mitov software, it makes it easy to connect them together, which lets you do a lot of functionality. It's really amazing. I'm a big fan of Boyan's components, and then it's also, he uses it in the Visvino. But you can also do logical things as well. So it's not just like live bindings, whereas live bindings or data binding is where you're connecting like this value to this, like a slider to a value field or display field. It also lets you create logic and business logic in there as well in OpenWire. And then, of course, we need the bold for Delphi. Sure, this tab is it. Okay. So, so this is a ORM library for Delphi. So, kind of different. I mean, I guess it's very different, but you can find out more here on GitHub with this. And there's a blog and as well. So go check that out. Okay, let's go back to the slides. So yeah, this was one that not a lot of people responded having used those. So definitely something to check out. It's like I said, the main use cases would be, it could be a developer productivity thing, but I think also it lets you get an architectural view of your application, and then also bring in non-developers or non-programmers, people maybe that aren't familiar with Delphi, to contribute to the business logic and the application. Package and dependency management. So then this one, Get It, is the one that's built into the IDE, was definitely the predominant one here, 60%. Auto Get It, which isn't technically a plugin, but I'm a big fan of, was number 2. And so I'm gonna go to the next slide here, and we'll look at it individually. I didn't link on this one. What Auto Get It does, and actually I have Auto Get It running right now, because so I just right before my trip to Delphi Summit, my laptop died. I contacted support and I wasn't able to get parts in time, so I got a new laptop. So of course that means I'm reinstalling everything. And so what Auto Get It is great for is it's a interface to get it outside of RAD Studio, partially. But one of the things I love about it, though, is that you have your a list of Get It packages you want to install in the IDE. In the Delphi IDE, you have to click install on each one, and some of them require you to restart the IDE, which means go into Get It, select install, accept the license, restart the IDE, restart, go back in again, go into Get It, select the next one, restart the IDE, and that just takes way too long, especially if you have a few packages, more than one. So Auto Get It lets you do that all in one process without having to keep restarting. You close the IDE, you run Auto Get It, it goes through and installs them all. It's also great if you, so if you're setting up a new machine, you can have a list. Auto Get It can create a list for you of all the packages, and then you can just install all those packages on your new development machine or in a virtual machine. Very useful for that, to install those from Get It. Then so Delphinius, DPM, Delphi Pi, and James, the Delphi project manager, are all package managers. Boss is a little different in that it's a dependency manager. One thing that Boss does that's really cool, actually, is that you can have two packages, two projects you're working on that use different versions of the same package, the same library, and it can unload it and unload the packages and load the correct version as between two projects. I don't know how that would work if you had them both open in the project group. I haven't tried that, but it's great for that. It's great for bringing in the dependencies, downloading packages, the right version of packages, and then switching between them as you move between projects. So there's a lot of great package managers in here. And then I just was talking to Vincent of vSoft and Final Builder at Delphi Summit, and I knew he was working on a package manager, but I looked when I was making this list, and he hadn't had an update. But when I was talking to him there, he's going to have a presentation coming up about what's going on with that. So I'm excited about that one. That could be very great and very useful as well. But yeah, these are great. Package managers are a good thing. If you might add some of these to your repartee, if you do find that you're for example, dealing with multiple versions of the same project in different project, or multiple versions of the same package, same library in different projects, or if you're wanting to make it easier to share your project and dependencies to other people, whether it be open source project or bringing people onto your team or whatever, where you need to make sure they're using the same versions, the same packages, the same libraries that you are. Also especially good if you're using it with a source control, not source control. What's it called? Integration. Continuous integration, that's the term. A build server or continuous integration, right? So then you know that the build server is using the right version of the packages, and you have the packages, the libraries synced across all your different places. Isn't DPM exactly the one Vincent works on? Okay, now I gotta check. I may have included it on here and then forgot that it was the one he did. So DPM, okay, Vincent is working on, this is the one Vincent works on. Oh, yep, okay, yeah, this is the one Vincent's working on. Okay, you are correct, Stefan. That is the one he's working on, so, okay. So he's got an update. So it's not a new package manager, it's an update for DPM. Okay, specialized. So this is, I call it specialized. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why it lost sound there. So I went back here to, there was a few comments about different package managers. Yeah, so DPM is vSoft. So Peter said, why not use NuGet with PowerShell for package managers? You could. NuGet points to the Microsoft Visual Studio package repository, and you can point it to a different package repository, but you would end up needing to do it, you'd be doing it the hard way, essentially, at that point. You would have to be configuring it yourself to work with that, whereas these are going to understand Delphi and point to Delphi sources specifically. Paul says, okay, let's see. Oliver commented that AQTime offers sampling and instrumentation. Okay, so it does both. AQTime does both. And hopefully everybody's hearing me now. All right, so we're going to go on to specialized. This, oh, I know what happened. I was hiding mine because, there we go. Hopefully you can still hear me now. Let's look. All right, yeah, you can still hear me, but I'm not visible. I tried to hide the video so you can see Parnassus Navigator, and for some reason that muted me as well. But yeah, so this is specialized, kind of miscellaneous. I didn't want to call it miscellaneous. It was trying to kind of way to group these together, but they just became specialized. The big ones here are Parnassus Bookmarks and Parnassus Navigator. They are both available through Get-It, great add-ins as well. Then some other ones here. So I was going to look through some of these and talk about them. Let's see, how do I get my video back? Oh, there we go. Oh, that's what I got to do. Okay, I see how to do that now. So bookmarks and Navigator both are navigation related add-ins. The Navigator puts the main thing it does is it puts a nice thumbnail view of your code down the side, so you can see kind of all your code there next to the track bar. Very small, but it's actually very, very useful for navigating around. You can look over and see and jump around, especially in larger files, to the spot you're looking for much quicker than you could if you were just scrubbing with the scroll bar. Bookmarks is a enhanced version of the bookmarks in Delphi that you've probably used, hopefully you've used, that let you put a bookmark down and then jump to someplace else in your code and then jump back. Bookmarks really expands on that functionality, adds a number of new ways of using bookmarks, as well as just makes the existing bookmarks better. Then I didn't realize this, but the IDE theme editor colorizer actually was archived in January of this year. So it was on the list. It's number 3 in the list, but it was archived January of last year. So it hasn't been updated in a while, apparently. So I'm not sure how I thought I checked all these. ChatGPT Wizard, it is available in Get-It, and there's a couple other ones out there, but this is the main one we saw. We got a pretty good showing here as well, 12%. It brings ChatGPT as well as a number of other AI large language models into the IDE to make it easier to work with them for your Delphi development process. Okay, that's odd. Apparently somebody's not getting, wasn't able to, the LinkedIn didn't work. And he can't hear me say that. This is one that I didn't include in the list originally, and I knew about it, but I had forgotten about it. And is the Delphi Users Helper by Stefan. And it's a game changer, honestly. If you type in a method or an object, an identifier, and the compiler says, hey, I can't find this, all you have to do is Control-Shift-A on the identifier, and it will find the unit you need and add it to your uses clause automatically. I don't know why it's not built into the IDE. It should be built into the IDE, but at least we have this one you can take advantage of today. Then the other ones here are a little bit more different. So I'm going to jump out here to the pages on them. Oops, I missed it. IDE Explorer. So IDE Explorer is one that I looked at when I was putting those lists together. Then I left it off because I felt like it was too, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, too specialized maybe. But then I saw someone suggested on the list, and I'm like, all right, I'll include that. So it allows you to browse the internal fields, methods, and properties and events of the IDE, which sounds really cool. But again, it's something I think you're mostly going to be used if you are building an add-in for the IDE. But I could be wrong, because like I said, some people have written it in, and it showed up quite a bit in the voting once it was included. So yeah, that's that one there. So that could be useful for you. The Walk a Time one was a time tracking add-on. So it plugs into a system called Walk a Time that just makes it easier to keep track of your time and how you're spending your time within the different files in your Delphi, different projects in your Delphi. So then this one here, Android Merger, is part of the I'm not going to be able to pronounce that correctly, which is a big component library, but it has a separate tool here of Android Merger. that this is something I have tried to do before and was not aware of this one, so I was excited to find out about it. It makes it easier to integrate in AAR's SDK files into your FireMonkey application. So if you're doing Android development and you have SDKs or libraries or whatever, different jar packages for Android, you can integrate those in or import those into your Delphi applications using Android Merger. So very specific use case, but if you need it, that is a really great one to have. Okay, so then the next category we have is static code analysis, which again, this is one that did not have a lot of people using it, which is unfortunate because this is, I think, a huge, huge, huge benefit for, I would say, all Delphi developers. All developers would benefit greatly from static code analysis. Although static code analysis essentially is similar to the hints and warnings built into the IDE. Now, I always feel I need to repeat this, but because I keep running into it, if you should be paying attention to the hints and warnings the compiler gives you. They are there to help you. Time and time again, I get people say, hey, can you look at my code? And I've done this as well, where I've ignored hints and warnings, and the answer to the problem I'm having or they're having is right there in the messages window. And if you don't pay attention and keep up your hints and warnings clean, then what happens is you get so many hints and warnings, all the useful information is buried. So if you encounter a hint or a warning that is not valid for this particular use case, which I find oftentimes people say that, but it turns out they are valid. You can disable it around that one block of code. And so that's why I say is you want to turn off the hint and warning around that one piece of code where it's being used, put a comment there about why it's valid and why you've turned it off for this one block. Don't turn it off all over the place. Just turn it off right there. And that way you keep your hints and warnings cleaned up. But then when you're ready to take on to the next level, that's where you will bring static code analysis in. Fix Insight actually integrates into your hints and warnings window as well. It has other ways of using it by TMS software, and it adds a number of other options in there that are incredibly useful. For example, one that saves me so many times is the format statement, right? So sometimes you get your percent symbols wrong in your format, and you don't know until you run it. Well, Fix Insight will say, hey, you're passing an integer or you're passing a float and you called it an integer, or you have more items in here than you have in your list or whatever. If that gets mixed up, it'll tell you a number of other things like that. Sonar Delphi is a open, so Sonar Cube is they have both a community edition and a paid version of Sonar Cube as a static code analysis system. Sonar Delphi is a plugin for Sonar Cube that's open source, available on GitHub. There, Embarcadero was actually, when I was at Embarcadero, I pulled some of them together, a few different plugins out there, but then somebody else, Integrated Application Development, has now taken that component plugin or that version of the plugin and expanded on it. So Sonar Delphi, I haven't used it since I looked at it a couple of years ago, but it is a big static code analysis system that can be used. Its main purpose, well, I say main purpose. A common use case with it is in to point it at your version control system. And so it can give you a report, a status of how is your code looking, the health of your code, is the number of warnings going down or up, right? So if over time you're getting more and more of these warnings, issues in your code, that's a sign of bad code health, where those should be going down. You can also have it generate reports on individual check-ins. You can have it create issues and things along those lines as well. Delphi Lint uses Sonar Delphi and brings these hints and warnings into the IDE so that you can see them as you're writing code and see what's going on to see if you're making mistakes, similar to like Fix Insight would do. Browse and Dockets, another one by David Hoyle. I didn't realize that it was also static code analysis, but it does. And SciTools Understand was one that someone had suggested to me as well. I'm not familiar with that one, but it's another static code analysis tool that is updated to work with the latest version of Delphi. And then the one that had the least usage was DIR Scanner. And it's actually kind of unique in this list in that it is a static code analysis tool that focuses on vulnerability and security issues in your code. So where you may have code that is introducing a known vulnerability, a known issue that could become or potentially introducing a known issue. And so a lot of these give you warnings. They could be false positives. The more aggressive they become in trying to warn you about things, the more likely you're going to get false positives. But especially the security scanner one is really useful to say, oh, you know what? I have hard-coded a password in here, right? If you've hard-coded a password, then somebody could scan your program and read that passcode out of your program, out of your binary, and circumvent your security. There's a number of other ones on there. So DIR scanner is a really big one. It is more expensive, but the alternative is introducing some major security vulnerabilities. So definitely worth checking out. I would say, I feel like the landscape has changed as far as security goes. A number of years ago, you kind of, everything was HTTP. We didn't use HTTPS unless you were online banking, right? And even then, it's like, oh, I wouldn't use online banking because the internet's a scary place. I don't trust it. But now the internet's even scarier, but security's gotten better, and security is kind of important everywhere. And what happens is that if, let's say, you're making a media player application or something you think is a simple application, it's not important. If that has a vulnerability in it, someone can then get access to that app through your application you made that doesn't have any important data, right? It's not important. But once they get access to that, they can then move laterally into a more important system. And so, and this happens from time to time. You'll see where a system was compromised, not because the important customer relationship management database was vulnerable or was the main point of ingress, but because some other program left the back door open, essentially, and somebody was able to get in through that program and then move laterally into a more interesting program. So it's important to pay attention to security. DIR scanner is one solution, although there's lots of other options here you can do as well. Just DIR scanner is very focused on security. So it could be useful to include, if you're releasing your code to customers, hopefully you are, then check that out occasionally. So the next category is testing and debugging. Originally, I grouped logging in here, but then I added some more, and then at the end, I was like, "There's too many items in this category," so I broke them out. FastMM, I debated including that in here, and this one. So if you're not familiar with FastMM, that's the memory manager that's used by Delphi by default. So if you're using Delphi since 2009 and you haven't changed the memory manager, you're using FastMM. It's a great memory manager, much better than the old Delphi memory manager. The reason it's on here is it has a feature that a lot of people may not be familiar about of report memory leaks on shutdown, which I think I mentioned here on the next slide. Yeah. And so if your application's having memory leaks, or you want to know if you're having memory leaks, you can turn this on here, report memory leaks on shutdown. And when you close your application, it'll pop up and say, hey, here's your memory leaks. So yeah, very useful in that capacity there. So it's not, again, so it's mainly a library, but when you use it for this feature here becomes a debugging tool. I guess not really part of the IDE, but that you can work across applications. And then MatAccept and EurekaLog are also more libraries, but they're also very focused on, they're not something you would use, at least in my mind, they're not something you use like day-to-day in your application, but you include them in your application. And when your application has a failure or something happens in the field, it's able to capture some really useful debugging information for your application to make it easier to debug. And so you could combine these three together, or one of those two with FastMM, for example, and it makes it a much better way of being able to track down bugs or memory leaks in your application. Similar to what you might see with Deleaker, which is an external tool that you use that can help track down memory leaks. Test Insight, if you're doing unit tests, which I hope you are, then you should really take a look at Test Insight. It really, in my mind, this is an essential one. Again, part of this list was like, okay, this one, it feels like it's essential to me. How many other people are using it, think it's essential? And unfortunately, 13%. So hopefully you're all, this whole circle, people are doing unit tests, and only 13% are doing it the hard way. And not that the 13% are the only people doing unit tests. That would make me sad. But if you're doing unit tests, when you're doing unit tests, Test Insight is a great tool that brings in the unit tests into the IDE. And so you can actually have it so that as you're writing unit tests, as you're editing code, you can run the unit tests right there, and it can test your code and tell you if you're passing or failing right there in the IDE. So it makes it a much faster turnaround time, much tighter loop for being able to test your code and knowing if you're making things better or making things worse. So a great one there for that. Deleaker is a memory leak tool, external memory leak tool. And then Parnassus Parallel Debugger. This is a newer one by David Millington Parnassus that's included in Get It, although there's a blog post you can go check out about it there. And its main focus is a parallel debugger, so being able to debug across multiple threads, but it actually adds a number of features specifically for debugging in general. So again, very useful, fairly general purpose if you do debugging. Hopefully you're all debugging your code. Yeah. So the question here about using show Codelec in use, I wasn't planning to. I don't have it installed, but there are some videos up on our website that do go over Codelec. Sorry, like I said, I wasn't planning to do that one today. Logging is the next category here, and we're almost done. I see we're about out of time, but these are tools. Again, kind of some of them are kind of libraries, but they're also tools that let you log what your code program's doing. And so this is really useful to know, especially if your program is being ran externally, not by you, right? So you passed it on to somebody else. Logging is a way to see what's going on when a user says, hey, I got an error. And you're like, well, what did you do to get there? I'm like, I don't know. That's not very helpful. You can turn logging on remotely, for example, and get that. Usually you don't want to leave logging on production for general users. There are some circumstances when you do want to have some level of logging turned on in production purposes, but generally you want to use it specifically when you're debugging. And so what logging can do is it can grab information like when this method is entered, or I'll back up. If you've ever added a show message to your code to see what's going on in your code, that's what logging's for. Is instead of having a dialog pop up or a write line message that goes out to the console, logging is a way of bringing that all together. It does. So you can set different levels of logging, right? So you can say this message, if this happens, this is a serious warning or a serious error, whereas other information might be informational or debugging or different levels of priority. And so if you have in production mode, you might say, don't log anything unless it is a warning or an error, then log it. But informational ones, debugging ones, don't include those. But then when you're in development mode, you might say, turn your logging to include everything. And so then you can go into your logs and look and see what's going on and see what's going on behind the scenes. So it's great. You can do a lot of similar stuff from the IDE if you're just setting breakpoints and debugging in the IDE, but logging, it can be faster if you're doing like needing to check the same things over and over and over again, or just wanting to know what's going on. Knock something off there. Know what's going on in the on an ongoing basis. So as far as the loggers here, and device lenses here. Okay, So device lens, I didn't have it in the list originally. I knew, so this was interesting. This is Dave Nottage's package, and I knew he'd made this, but for some reason I thought he had discontinued it. And I don't know why. And I put the survey out and someone commented about it. I'm like, oh, but it's not available anymore. And I went and looked and it's like, oh, I was wrong. So sorry, Dave Nottage, that I didn't get in there to begin with. But device lens is specifically for viewing Android and I think iOS device logs. So Android and iOS have their own logging system internally that you can use. And this lets you go view that. Incredibly useful if you're doing mobile development to be able to view those logs. And much better than doing it via the, I've always done it via the console, just type ADB logcat to view the Android log. Device lens, huge improvement. So thanks to Dave Nottage for that. Gridgy Cloud Logger is a cross-platform logger out there as well, open source. And then we have these two paid options that were the bigger ones on the list. CodeSite, the Express version's included with Delphi with Rad Studio, but then he also offers a full version by Ray Konopka that is quite a bit in big, adds quite a bit of new features, additional functionality to it. And I've had a few developers that have come to me with some weird problems that I've pointed them to the full version of CodeSite, and they go use it, and they were like, how have I been developing all this time without knowing about this tool? So if you're not aware of it, don't feel bad. A lot of people haven't been aware of these logging tools, but they really can be a game changer for just seeing what's going on inside your program. It's like having X-ray vision, really, to know if it's set up correctly. One of the things about the full CodeSite is it does have instrumentation where you can tell it. No, it's not called instrumentation. I can't remember what the feature's called, where you can point it to a class and it can go in and add logging entries at each method of that class so that you can see what parameters are being passed into the class, what methods are returning, everything. It's really useful to just like when you're like going crazy. And actually, if you're using logging regularly, you probably aren't going to get to the point where you're just like losing your mind and like, why is this not working? Because you have more information available to you that you can see what's going on. So yeah, the number of options here to choose from. Smart Inspect, I've used that one in the past as well, but before it was Code Partners, CodeSite, great ones. I've used Gridgy Cloud Logger before, and like I said, I used Device Lens. I have not used Quick Logger or Logger Pro, but Daniel Tate does great work there, so I'm sure it's a good utility too. Okay, I moved this to the end because I don't know. I felt like it was kind of the big finale. These are the general purpose ones. These really just they don't completely change the developer experience, but they do have a huge impact on how you're using in general. GExperts and CN Wizards are very similar. They're kitchen sink plugins, if you will, that just include a ton of functionality. MX Code Explorer, I used this MX Code Explorer a long time ago, and then I got out of using it, and then I was glad to see that it's now being maintained by, I don't remember his name. I can see his face, and let's see. Sure, this tab is dead. Gosh, it's not on here. Someone's going to mention it in the chat. Okay. Uwe, yes. Thank you, Oliver. Yes, Uwe. Uwe maintains it now. And then actually GExperts also was taken over by somebody else too. It's been around for a long time. So that was a different category. Oh wait, no, that's this category. Yeah, so GExperts was taken over, and Model Maker were both taken over. So great to see those are still around and available. The model maker, I believe I can't remember if there was, I know there was 2 different editions of it originally, and I can't remember if Code Explorer was free or if it was the paid version, but now it's free. So that's awesome. It's free now. Thanks to Uwe for maintaining it. So these are the 2 big ones here. They do provide some similar functionality, but Model Maker Code Explorer is really just about focused on refactorings and navigating your code. Whereas GExperts does a ton of things, as well as CN Wizards. So interestingly, some people call it CN Pack, some people call it CN Wizards, but technically CN Pack is like the group that maintains it, and CN Wizards is their Delphi add-ins. Because if you go to CN Pack, they have some other components as well. And then Codex is another one that I knew Dave Nottage had made, but then for some reason thought it wasn't available anymore. That is a great add-in for Delphi and Rad Studio. Let me share that here. Share screen. It's a general productivity add-in as well. I'm trying to, oh gosh, there was something I used this for at some point, and I can't remember what it was used for, what I was using it for. But it is updated to the latest version. Was it this? I don't remember. It's well, I'll blame it on the jet lag. Gosh, all right, yeah, I don't remember what that was useful for. And then Code for Wizard, I saw he's also joined here as well. And then he commented that he has a new plugin coming soon. So if you check out his Code for Delphi and Code for DWizard, I think, yeah, it was Copilot. Yeah, Copilot for Delphi is what it's called. So yeah, a new plugin coming here for that as well. But here, Code for Wizard is a just productivity, several features improvements to efficiency, speed, and productivity via the OpenTools API. Oh, I wasn't sharing my screen. There we go. So yeah, it's not available yet, but I didn't sign an NDA for the comment that was put in the survey. So I'm pretty sure I can say this. It's called Copilot, should be out. He said soon, that I'm guessing it'll be on GitHub, maybe not, but you can go to the, there's his blog as well as YouTube channel, probably find some details there. But Code for DWizard is a wizard for Delphi. I think it's in Git, but it's also available here via GitHub. Okay, and I think, yeah, I put this at the end. So what was overall the plugins that people rated as being most essential? And there's a few different ways of looking at this. So I put this all in here, but just kind of to get a feeling. If there's things on this list that you're not using, you might want to reconsider. Even though there's some ones that are further down the list that, like I said, that I feel like are very essential for specific use cases. So here are the most essential add-ins. And so what I did is I went for ones that had at least one person voted as it being essential to be on this list. And there's 3 different ways that this is categorized. The rank by top is in the survey. There was 2 parts of the survey. There was one part that was categorized based and one part that was just pick your top ones. And you could skip to that second half, and some people did. And then this is how they ranked those. So this is just people that just based on the ranking in the top. But then within categories as well, I took how it was ranked there to see that. And so interestingly, FastMM was ranked higher in categories than it was ranked overall. And CN Wizards was ranked, let's see, this was, yeah, so this is somebody, it was ranked 3rd by the most people saying it was essential. but it was ranked 8th in categories. So I'm guessing that means a lot of people said it was, or the people that use CN Wizards saw it as essential, but in the category of general purpose ones, something else beat it out. And so it wasn't the top in the category or the top overall, but the people that used it felt like it was very essential. So yeah, there's a nice list of add-ins for you that you could consider including here. Any surprises? I don't know if there's any surprises in this list, although I did expect CN Wizards to be higher compared to GExperts. That was something I was kind of curious about to see which one it was. So GExperts still is the overall most popular in this category, or in the general purpose category, with Model Maker Core Explorer still making a big showing as well. Yeah. So a lot of these, I could probably go into whole webinars just on some of these as well, but and maybe I will do that in the future. If there's ones you would like to see shown in more detail, I'm happy to do some more on that. And here is, if you're not registered via the, if you didn't register, and again, sorry if you got too many emails, make sure you do that, because that's how we'll send out the slides and the replay link. And sign up for the rest of the series of webinars. If you have more suggestions, you can leave them in the comments now real quick, or send me an email, jim@gdksoftware.com. And I would love to hear from you, and look forward to seeing you on more webinars. I'll throw up the QR code if you want to scan that to come out there, since YouTube doesn't make links clickable.